there, fictional friends, and welcome to another episode of Fully Booked. I'm Megan.
And I'm Shireen.
And we're actually finishing off Dystopian YA month here over on the podcast. I went off on a loop last week because life is gonna life sometimes, and we just, don't have time to get to everything that we want to.
Things are a little crazy right now, okay, people?
Yeah, things are a little bit nuts at the moment, and schedules are doing what they're doing right now, so we're working with what we've got. Luckily, we had an episode on the back burner for a bazillion years that was the one about Priscilla.
Oh yes, that was a great episode.
That I was saving for a rainy day, and that wound up being what last week was, and I was like, hey, great. So we were still able to get some content out, but go listen to that episode because we had so much to say about that.
We were disturbed by that movie.
Yeah, we were. I think both of us were pretty triggered by the whole.
My husband refused to watch it.
I think he watched about the first 15 minutes with us, and he was like, I have to go. This is annoying.
He was like, no, I can't watch this.
Well, especially you guys were having a girl.
Oh, yeah.
And you were pregnant at the time that we watched the movie also, and he was just he was not happy at all. It really made him mad.
Yeah. I think he was like, do men actually do this? I'm leaving.
Yeah, he hated it. I was like, oh, wow. Very rarely do I see him walk away from a movie. Even if it's really bad, he'll stick it out because he thinks it's funny. So
he normally watches it.
He does. Yeah. No, he'll be the one to stick it out with us and just kind of chuckle along with us at some of the absurdities, but that was not the case with this movie. So anyway, so feel free to go check that episode out because it's actually honestly a pretty good episode. I think we make some pretty decent points.
Yeah, I think we were on a roll with that one.
We were a bit, yeah.
We will not be on a roll with this one. No. Fair warning.
No, we're not going
to. It's terrible.
Yeah. But anyway, look, you can, check that out obviously on any podcast platform or over at fullybooked.ca too, where we have a whole bunch of coverage of all kinds of different topics and stuff. And I like to just give the website a shout out regularly because without it, we wouldn't exist. It was how we kind of started everything.
True. Yeah. And it does keep us going
a
little bit.
It does. Yeah, no, for sure. And it just gives us new inspiration and ideas as time goes by because of our team of contributors and everything as well. So
it's true. We're the sideshows in this.
Kind of. We're just here to...
We're Sideshow Bob and Sideshow Mel.
Oh, God.
Yay.
Anyway, obviously, we figured we'd finish out the month because it did feel incredibly timely as well. It weirdly decided on YA Dystopian before I found out that this movie was coming out on Netflix this month.
Oh, I thought it was a big build-up that you had planned.
No, not at all. No, I was I had written it down as an idea and been we could do dystopian young adult stuff. And then I think maybe 2 weeks later, the trailer for Uglies dropped, and I was like, wow, that's weird. Okay.
Good timing.
That's timely.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about that's at the 2024 adaptation of Uglies. So it's based on a series of novels by Scott Westerfeld, which were published between, I believe, 2005 to 2007 or 2008.
That checks out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can talk about that. There were 4 books in the series in total: Uglies, Pretties, Specials, and Extras.
Even the names.
Yeah, they're not great. Also, just no offense or anything. I don't know how the rights worked in this particular case, but I did notice that Scott Westerfeld was an executive producer on the film.
He was?
Yes. And I was like, okay, but you know what? Stephen King was an executive producer on a lot of his earlier films, and they were terrible because he just sold the rights in a particular way and had no creative control. So who knows?
I mean, I didn't read the books. It depends what your source material was. And again, stuff written in 2005, 2007 had a different... flavor
sensibility
to it.
Yes, I agree. Okay, so obviously I think most people who have seen this seen the movie can probably attest to this. However, I can confirm now that at the time that we're recording this, Uglies has a score of 4.8 out of 10 on IMDb and 15% on Rotten Tomatoes from critics. The audience score is 47%.
Okay, audience, sort yourself out. Did you just not have anything else to watch this weekend?
Probably. Honestly, I feel like that's what happens. I think that's what happens a lot of the time. So in preparation for this, I wasn't going to read the whole series, but I did read the first book. And while I can confirm that it is maybe not my favorite kind of thing necessarily, that overall the writing is a lot less ham-fisted, the characters generally make more sense, and there isn't as much sort of clunky exposition and poorly written dialogue and things like that. There's a lot more nuance to it, which I think comes through in the book a lot more. But I will say that it does very much feel like something that is from the mid 2000s and perhaps should have remained there.
I mean, you know, we had this whole boom at the time of books that then led to blockbuster movies, right? Like Hunger Games, Divergent, you know, you
Maze Runner.
And so, you know, watching this, first of all, it took me literally 5 days to get through this movie. I had to keep pausing it, and I forced my husband to watch it with me because I'm like, the only thing...
He's probably so mad at you.
He was so mad. I'm like, the only thing that's going to get me through this movie is your snarky commentary. And then I had to keep getting him to stop it every 10 minutes and explain to me what was going on.
You're like, okay, wait, what? That's the problem, is that there's clunky exposition at the beginning of the film.
Yeah.
However, they really don't fill in the gaps for you as time goes by, which I will say, like, the book does, which is unsurprising, obviously, because you have a lot more time to do it. But even the first, let's say the opening scene of the film, in which there is an overdubbed dialogue thing there from the lead character, Tally.
Where very 2013.
Very much. Where she explains how the world ended and how we wound up in the world that we're in now. In the novel, that's all explained throughout the course of essentially the entire book. Like, you get bits and pieces of it as you go on.
So it keeps the mystery alive a little bit. Yeah.
It's not just like, this happened and then this happened, so then we did this to fix it. Like, it's not like that.
Yeah.
It's not like that. Actually, it doesn't kick off in the same way at all. So essentially, okay, the world in which this story exists, film, novel, whatever, is basically, that's it, a dystopian future in which, I mean, essentially it's funny because they try to make it sound so much like it's because of looks, but really it's because humanity did what we're doing right now, which is overusing natural resources to a point where that's it. They essentially started to kill the planet. But for some reason, upper government levels, and maybe this is explained in some of the other books, but upper government levels basically decided that it was because there was too much infighting because people judged each other based on looks too much.
See, like, this is where you lose me in this. Like, it's like, I felt like everything, even in the you know, exposition dumps and everything, there just wasn't clear, like, we went from point A to point B and this is how we got there. It was like we went from A to J and we went through Z.
Yeah, kind of. You know? And then circled back.
And then circled back and we went back to A. And I'm like, I have no idea what's happening.
Yeah, it's very weird.
Sorry, continue.
No, you're right, though. It's very, you're correct. It's very strange. So essentially what happens in this world is that's it. As children, you're separated from your parents and you know, go through like a schooling system or whatever. But the entire goal is to make everyone beautiful so no one feels left out or judged. And so when every person turns 16, they undergo what they call a procedure, an operation.
A surgery,
which turns them pretty, which essentially is just, it's essentially just like extreme plastic surgery that they're meant to be doing on people, which we should talk about too, because it does not translate to the film well at all. It's, anyway, because in the novel, this is proper extreme plastic surgery. Like, they are like, you know, opening you up, reshaping bones, adding like plastic inserts and like, you know, filler and these things, like, you know, changing your facial features completely. Like, they are making you look like almost a different person. That's the way that it's described in the novel. It's like a very extreme plastic surgery. And it triggered
really painful.
Oh God, it sounds horrible. I know. I'd love to know the technology that they've come up with where there's no bruising, swelling, or recovery time.
Yeah, and it takes them like 5 minutes to go through this.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And this, when I was reading about it in the book, it triggered like a memory for me. There was a TV show and I went and looked it up because I was like, I remember this being a thing, and then I saw like a video essay about it a while ago. There was, they used to do like extreme makeover shows in the early aughts and stuff. Yes. So there was this show called The Swan that aired for one season in 2004, and it was an extreme makeover show along the lines of things like, you know, Extreme Makeover, and then Extreme Makeover Home Edition was different.
That was after.
And that was also like, you're fixing people's houses.
It's not their face. No. Okay, pause. How crazy is it that we had a reality show where we just stuck people and gave them plastic surgery.
So this show, The Swan, that's it. It only managed one season, and that's essentially what it was. It was over, I went and looked it up, it was over a 3-month period. They would take these women and they would put them into, they would do like a lot of plastic surgery and like different things on them, obviously change their hair, change their style, like all that stuff. But a lot of what was involved was also plastic surgery. So you're talking about nose jobs, filler, cheeks, chins redone, facelifts,
probably not as advanced in 2004 as well.
Liposuction, all really, really extreme plastic surgery, like to an extent that these women would, and then they would go through this whole process and then have a reveal 3 months later, and they hadn't seen themselves or what they looked like.
They don't get to see themselves for 3 months?
No.
This is wild! Yeah. We should watch this.
And then they would do a reveal where they'd have the women come out and they'd have them see themselves like all glammed up in the mirror, kind of thing, and like do a whole thing. And of course, all of them, like I guess, quote unquote, looked like happy when they would do it, but there were all sorts of exposés and things that were done later where a lot of these women basically wound up in therapy because they were like, they showed me my new face and like the way that I looked, and I was so triggered that I didn't even recognize myself. And some of them, they were like, and they weren't with like their families for a few months, and some of them, like their kids would start crying when they saw them because they didn't realize who they were, and it was like a whole thing. And it was and there were all kind, I think there might have been some lawsuits, there was like a whole, and there was no, of course, 2004, there was no psychological counseling offered or provided throughout the course of it. It was just like, here, and we're going to do these 17 different procedures on you in this 3-month period, and then here you go, and now you look like a different human being, and you have no time to adjust to it at all.
So what makes this different from Extreme Makeover?
I don't think they did quite, it was very similar, but I don't think they did quite as much plastic surgery in Extreme Makeover.
And I think they were allowed to see their own faces.
I think they were, yeah.
Because I remember in Extreme Makeover them showing like the recovery of time and stuff, and it almost served as like a, hey, this is why you shouldn't do plastic surgery,
kind of,
Because I remember watching it being like, good God, that looks painful. Like, why would you do that to yourself?
I know, it seemed insane. And that, anyway, that is what, especially when I was reading the book, that was what it triggered for me, was a memory of this show. And then I had seen, like, I think a couple of years ago or something, I had seen like a video expose of some sort that was talking about many of the psychological implications for the contestants, and how they all, most of them after, spoke about how kind of horrible it was.
Well, I can imagine. And then it just makes you think, like, because they mentioned this in the movie, that they have to keep going and having more surgeries because inevitably you age, and like if you have things like filler and stuff, you have to get it redone.
Yes.
And so I wonder if these women who were on this show, like, would have gone one way or another, right? They would have either been happy with their face, kind of, or they would have been like, get this shit off me.
Yeah, well, I think some of them might have had certain procedures reversed as well. I wouldn't even be surprised. And I can't even imagine the immediate... Can you imagine getting immediate body dysmorphia like that? How fucked up would that be?
Oh, you wouldn't be okay. And then if you had kids and your kids are like scared of you now,
they don't even know, they're like, they don't recognize their mom anymore. That's wild. Anyway, so that's what it reminded me of, and that's like sort of like the general principle of it. And the whole point is that you become pretty. And now, I don't know about you, but even when I watched the movie, I've watched it twice now. I'm a good person. I
barely made it through one. Yeah. I almost gave up with an hour to go.
You're like, oh, fuck it. And I noticed it even the first time that I watched the movie, just based on what you see from people, because of course, so the lead character Tally, played by Joey King, the whole thing with her at the beginning is that her and her friend Paris, who's that guy from Outer Banks, I don't remember his name, it's John, what's the character's name, John something?
Oh, he's got
two names.
Isn't it like John Jacob Jingleheimer?
John David. Is it John David?
No, is it? Hang on.
Am I thinking of the Duggars?
You are, yeah. Like that's Jim Bob. Hang on. Shout out to Whitney.
Shout out to Digging Up the Duggars. You guys are really funny.
Yeah, you really are. I introduced Megan to this.
And I'm like hooked on it now.
What is this show? Outer Banks.
Outer Banks. I thought it was John David because it was like JD or something they call him. Or am I thinking of a different character?
John B.
Oh, that's it, John B. Thank you. It's just stupid, but anyway, whatever. I've watched 2.5 seasons of Outer Banks and could not tell you what the plot.
I have no idea. I think there's something to do with a treasure hunt. And I started watching it, being like, "Ooh, like National Treasure." I love National Treasure.
You have to stop.
I just love that movie.
Okay, we're going to tangent about this for a minute because I know we're going to get back to this stupid movie, but it's really bad, guys. So what does it matter?
Worry.
Yeah, what does it matter? Oh my God. Anyway, so a couple, when was it, last week or a couple weeks ago, we had a text from Shireen and she's like, I'm making Dan watch this really bad movie.
Oh yeah!
on Prime, and we're like, okay, and she's like, yeah, it's called The Hunters, I think is what it's called, and I was like, okay, and she's like, so I thought it was going to be like National Treasure, but now it's not. Now I realized that it was a Hallmark movie, but it's supposed to be like an adventure one. It was from like 2013 or something.
So bad. And not as bad as this movie.
No, and I put it on, and oh my goodness, that was like a fever dream of an adventure film. Also, allegedly based on a graphic novel.
Well, and like there was a whole montage in there that I told you, right? Like that they're getting ready for this gala that they've stumbled upon that they have to go into because there's one of their missing artifacts in there.
The sponsors were ham-fisted in that film. They were really
so
bad.
Good.
The product placement was incredible.
I know.
It was Walmart and Pantene.
Yeah, well, it was, yeah, and like that whole thing, I was like, well, this is like the only National Treasure feeling part of this movie.
Yeah, they have to go to crash a gala. Yeah, that's true. Oh God. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Tangent over. So at the beginning, what we're sort of shown is Tally with her friend Paris. He's 3 months older than her, so he'll be 16 first, and he goes to have the procedure done. But they're supposed to be best friends forever, so they decide that they're going to meet each other like a month after the procedure. But he never shows up, and so she sneaks.
Shock.
Yeah, so she sneaks over to the pretty side of town,
which is like a fever dream in itself.
It
like,
is. It doesn't make any sense.
It reminded me of something, and I can't remember what it was, but I was watching it, and I'm like, this kind of reminds me of like a mashup of like that scene from Percy Jackson when they go into the casino.
Oh yeah.
And like another apocalyptic movie where like the rich people end up in like all the fancy places.
I don't remember, but yeah, there are a few of them like that in the YA sphere especially. Yeah. And yeah, you're right, definitely go listen to our episode about Percy Jackson also because it's really bad. Anyway, so she goes looking for him and runs into him, and again, see, that's what doesn't work about this, because in the novel, what you're seeing is it's sort of when she goes to find him, and she only recognizes him because of a couple of little features on his face, but otherwise he looks really fucking different. Yeah. Whereas the problem with this is that they're keeping all the actors as the same people, right? It's not like they're changing.
They would have to change the actors.
Yeah, but what winds up happening in this case is it's just all of the quote unquote pretties are just people who have the TikTok bold glam filter on for the
their hair and makeup done, and now they've got a filter on their face.
Yeah, to airbrush their skin.
That's it.
And that's it. That's the thing. That's the thing, is the hair is different, but he still looks like the same person, and it's. Tally is quote unquote one of the uglies, and it's just Joey King without makeup on, and they've made her hair look frizzy, or they give her a wig. Yeah. That made her hair frizzy. Yeah. Yeah. And you're like, okay, so she just looks like Joey King without makeup on.
Right.
Yeah.
She still just looks like Joey King.
Well, yeah. Anyway. So we're, you get a lot of that stuff. There's a lot more in the novel, I will say, of like hesitation about aspects of turning pretty, and the fact that like her and Paris used to kind of make fun of the pretties to an extent.
Okay, so I was confused about this, right? Because in the movie, it's very clear that she's like obsessed with this as much as everybody else.
She is in the book, but it's more because she thinks she has to be to an extent, whereas I found in the movie it was like a little bit like pitifully desperate of like, oh my god, I have to be pretty, oh my god, I can't believe I'm not over there being pretty. Like she's not really like that in the novel. She
doesn't have much of a personality in the movie.
No, that's it. And she's got more gumption in the book, which is like not surprising, because like we've seen that with like Twilight, and we've seen that with a bunch of different adaptations as well, right, of like books from that time period, is that suddenly your female main character has no fucking personality for whatever reason, and that's just rarely the case in the book, I find.
Yeah, and I think it was like this translation of trying to make her seem like an awkward teenager in the movie, and they get these like movie stars who are like confident, they're older, they're not teenagers, and then the directors are trying to overdo it. Kinda. But then you're like, but now you've just wiped away her whole personality, because like with this one specifically, all she cares about is her surgery.
That's it, and it's just, it doesn't quite work, and you can feel while you're watching it, that whole first third, basically, that it just doesn't quite work that well.
Yeah, I was bored.
I agree, no, for sure. Anyway, so, of course she's thrown off by all of this and stuff. And then, there's a period of time of her waiting for her surgery. She meets a new friend named Shay.
Yeah.
Who again, see, that's why these things just don't work for me, because they have all these scenes with Shay and then getting to know each other and becoming good friends, and they form like a really nice bond and everything. And, I'm looking at the girl who plays Shay, and I'm just like, she's really cute. She's really pretty.
I mean, nobody in this movie is ugly, right?
No, that's the thing.
Like, leading up to the movie coming out, there was, like, a whole bunch of, like, jokes online, like, Reddit being like, hey, these are the people they have playing the Uglies.
Yeah,
and you're
that's
like,
the thing.
Not buying it.
That's it. And you're like, this doesn't make any sense.
No.
Anyway, and I'm like, this is just stupid. Anyway, and throughout the course of their friendship and right towards a certain point, Shay reveals there's a rumor, basically, that there's, like, a faction of people who exist in this place called the Smoke.
The Smoke.
Yeah, I know, stupid. Who sort of push against this system of everybody becoming pretty and falling into line and everything and being told what to do, and they just want to live. All of the government here act like there's some sort of like a militia faction who are trying to go against the government, but
they have a weapon.
Yeah, but genuinely they're just trying to live their lives without having to follow this government control, basically. So they're just people who are trying to live off the grid. Yeah. Anyway, and so Shay reveals that she's not having her surgery because her and Tally, it turns out, have the same birthday.
That's right.
She reveals she's not having her surgery, and she's actually going off to the Smoke to find this guy, David, who's essentially like the leader of this rebellion.
Did you find that the name of this guy was just really, like, anticlimactic?
Oh, God, yeah. I was like, David. I think there's a line about it in the book, actually. But
really?
She's just like his name seems so boring considering what he's doing.
Okay, thank you, because I'm watching this and it's like, and his name is David. I'm like, really?
I forget if it's that
David?
or maybe I watched the pitch meeting for the movie,
yeah.
and I think
that sounds
they
more
make
like
a joke about it where he's just like, really, his name is David?
I know, I was watching it, I'm like, David.
It's also because it's also weird because granted, I think it's supposed to show how different David is from all the other kids, because everybody is Tally, Shay, Paris, spelled Peris. Yeah. Like, they all have slightly odd, very dystopian, YA dystopian names, and his name is very very normal. Yeah. So I think that's part of the reason.
Oh, is it? Okay,
I think it's supposed to be on purpose. Anyway,
all right, fair.
So Shay wants Tally to go with her, but there's like a lot of back and forth about it, and she has like a lot of sort of, again, more inner turmoil about it than you're given to see in the film, obviously. And then the day of her surgery,
in the film, it's very clear that Tally's not going with her.
No, not at all.
She's not going to rat on her, but she's not going with her.
Yeah, and there's more internal dialogue, obviously, in the book, so you get a little bit more of that back and forth. The day of her surgery shows up, and she, instead of being taken in to do the surgery, she's called to meet the woman who's sort of like the head of this like program for the pretties. Her name is Dr. Cable. Totally different characterization than in the novel.
I would assume so. I feel like they were trying to channel, and I don't know if you feel this way, they were trying to channel Viola Davis in Songbirds and Snakes.
Kind of, but like more, less crazy, obviously.
More like, just like kind of like textbook evil.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So the thing is that like it's just disappointing because I'm like, we know Laverne Cox could do more than she's like allowed to do in this film. Yeah. Like, if you've watched Orange is the New Black or anything, like, you know this. Anyway, but she's again, a lot more like generic glamorous and like, sort of like I'm giving that impression that I'm being nice, but I'm actually not very nice, basically.
Yeah,
but
she gives Kate Winslet in Divergent.
Exactly. Yeah. But really, first of all, the character in the novel is part of the division that they call special circumstances. So that's why they say we can make you special.
Okay.
It's a whole thing in the book, and they kind of turn you into a super soldier. And
which, again, they don't explain. They just kind of show you the super soldiers,
so
and then we never talk about it again.
Yeah, special circumstances are people who are selected to get even more done to them, essentially, and work even more closely with the program and stuff. But you barely see any of that in the film. But the whole thing with the specials is that when Tally meets, first there's a guard who takes her to see Dr. Cable, and then Dr. Cable herself. The way she describes them is that they're pretties, but almost like pretties who were done wrong because they all look cruel and cold.
Interesting.
And like, it's just Laverne Cox is so glam. She's so like glamorous and beautiful that I'm like, well, she doesn't seem unapproachable though, and cold and closed off.
Yeah, it would have only been through her, like, behavior as, like, the evil mastermind.
But they didn't even really do that.
No.
They were just, and they also, in the movie, they're, like, you know, they do a lot more of the whole, like, oh, no, I'm just here to be your friend and maybe think about it and stuff. In the novel, she's not like that. She's like, you fucking tell us or you can't have your surgery.
Yeah.
She's straight up just, like, an asshole immediately.
Yeah, because in the movie, it's like, oh, like, you want your surgery, you can have it as soon as you tell us.
Yeah,
and
like,
now I'm sending you on
think about it.
I'm sending you on this big, like, journey to the center of the earth, you know?
Yeah, no, it's very different. So, anyway, so, of course, because Tally feels like she has no choice, and at this point she still wants her surgery, Dr. Cable and the program they send her to follow Shay's instructions that she left her if she ever wanted to join her in the smoke, to go and find them. In the book, they call them Smokies. It's funny.
Rusties.
The Rusties are like us, basically the people who fucked up the planet.
I see, okay.
To begin with.
I could not figure that one out.
Yeah, it's us. It's the people who came before who fucked up the planet.
There's always a stupid name.
I know.
Like, in these movies, like, there's two things. There's the names that they allocate to, like, the two different groups, like good versus bad.
Yeah.
And then there's the nicknames that they give each other within the good group.
Yep.
Always.
I know it's true. It's true. There's always like a different one just to differentiate properly so y'all don't forget. So she feels like she has no choice and she heads off to do this, and she's given her this pendant that has like a homing beacon where it's basically like when you find the smoke, because of course the government's pissed because they've never been able to track this place down. When you find the smoke and you find David, activate this and we'll come and get you, basically. She goes off to do this, does manage to find them, because there's a whole subplot in the book, which I'm sure comes back in the later books too, I don't know, that has to do with the orchids that grow.
Yeah, the white ones.
The white orchids that were planted allegedly by the Rusties back in the day, and then they overtook most of the flora and fucked a lot of things up for the environment, basically, is what it is.
That forces people to move to the cities, which also makes no sense.
Which also makes no sense.
Is overpopulation not a problem in this world?
It's stupid. So, and she's rescued by David and the Smokies, who, are supposed to be the ones setting these fires and stuff to try to keep the orchids at bay. In the book, that's actually not the case. There are rangers, what they call them, who are pretties, technically, who kind of just, like, know that the Smokies exist. They don't know where the smoke is. They know that they exist, but they're the ones who are setting the fires because it's part of their job, and they actually rescue Tally, and they're like, oh, you're going to the smoke, eh? And they drop her off.
What's their deal? So what, there's a whole group of, like, neutral people in this?
Kind of. Yeah, that's it. So there's, like, more...
So Switzerland exists?
Yeah. There's, like, more nuance to the idea of things, basically. It's interesting.
They would never put that in a movie, though. Like, it's confusing enough as it is.
They don't want any morally gray characters. Anyway. So, but in this, of course, again, that's it. In the movie, she's rescued by David, who, again... He rescues her, they stop, he takes off his helmet, and I'm like, oh, he's cute. And then I was like, immediately like, see? It doesn't make sense.
No, he's an ugly.
Oh, God, it's so stupid. Anyway, she is able to go to the smoke. Some people trust her, some people don't, and she starts, like, pretending that she wants to be there and stuff, but of course she gets to know the people, starts to like them, reconnects with Shay, and starts getting more information from David that starts to point out to her that maybe not everything is so great in the cities, and becoming pretty isn't the end goal for everybody, and doesn't have to be the end goal from everybody. There's a whole lot of montages and learning and all that kind of stuff where she gets, like, minor bits of information, and she works with them and everything, because everybody has a job in this place. You're not just there to be hot. Anyway, everybody contributes and everything to their society. And so she, of course, starts to form connections with people and bond with people. Her and David start to form, like, a love story that was unnecessary and didn't need to be there. It's also in the books. I didn't like it.
Kind of incomplete, too.
I just don't care about it. I don't care enough.
He does have washboard abs.
Yeah, I get. But see, again, I'm like, oh, he's so quote-unquote ugly.
It's so subjective.
And there's the other, like, all of them as well. Like, all of them, like, the uglies, like, are popping up. Well, that's the thing. That's why this doesn't work. Because, even that, what's that other one's name? Croy.
Yeah,
the
Croy.
Other one. I'm like, oh, yes, with those biceps and that jawline, he's definitely one of the uglies there.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You know? It's just stupid. And it just, none of this plays well now, because we've gotten so far past a point of understanding that beauty is subjective.
Right.
Where, yes, there's a beauty standard that a lot of people adhere to, and I'm not saying that that's not something that exists anymore. However, there's so much more subjectivity to it than there probably was, 15, 20 years ago.
Well, it makes sense, right? Like, it goes back to the show you were just describing, The Swan.
Yeah.
Like, an Extreme Makeover.
Yeah.
You would never have that on TV now. Like, it's wild when you think about it, that we actually had TV shows where it was like, hey, we're going to give you, like, extreme surgery on your face to make you hot.
I think that's the thing, right? Is because it wasn't like, all the ones where it was like, oh, we're going to change your hair and give you a new wardrobe and maybe show you how to do your makeup properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's one thing.
Like, that's one, whatever. Like, yeah, okay, fine. Like, even some of that, you're like, okay, this is a bit stupid because, again, you're asking people to conform to, like, one specific standard, and individuality is important.
Exactly.
But it's less intense. It's these ones where there was actual surgery involved in it.
Something that's irreversible.
Exactly. Or reversible with consequences
a lot
properly.
Of pain and suffering.
Yeah.
And that was like, I remember being a kid and being like, this is so shocking, because it's not like What Not to Wear, where it's like, okay, like, I'm going to convince you to, like, buy this type of wardrobe now, but, like, the
that
person
suits
was,
your body
like,
type better or something, yeah.
Right, but, like, the person was, like, a rocker chick to begin with, and now she has to wear, like, office chic all the time. It's like, eventually she's going to stop doing that, let's be honest, right? But, like, to change your whole face, and, like, it goes back to exactly what you were just saying, nowadays, that is wild. Nobody would ever think of, saying to somebody, hey, if your nose was different, maybe you'd just be pretty.
Maybe you'd be happier.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we just don't think that way anymore. No. I said to my husband, I was like, the only way you can tell that this was made in 2024 and not in, like, 2010 is the fact that, like, it's a very diverse cast.
Yes, that's about it. That's the only difference.
And yet the main character is still white.
Yeah, of course she is. Right. So, So anyway, there's, that's it. Obviously, her getting to know everybody. David introduces her to his parents, because the thing with David is that he wasn't born in the city at all. He was raised out here in the woods, basically, in this community that his parents established. So she meets his parents, and this is where you're given all of the actual information, which, like, when I was first watching the movie, I had already guessed this, is that I was like, so it seems to me like not only is there, quote unquote, an operation or surgery physically that's happening, but they're altering your brain chemistry in some way, shape, or form.
And they allude to that with her friend Paris, because he doesn't show up to see her.
And he's very dismissive of her when she does go to find him.
Yeah, he doesn't really recognize her all that much.
Yeah, exactly. And he's uninterested in her, right? So you're like, oh, okay, so they're definitely fucking around with their brains as well, which is unsurprising, but still something that I'm like, yeah, okay. And so all of that is confirmed by David's parents. They were cosmetic surgeons when they still lived in the city, and at that time they were working with the Pretty program essentially, and started to notice on subjects that they were finding small lesions on people's brains. Sometimes they would go away over time, and sometimes they would not. And these lesions eventually led to, kind of an alteration of overall brain chemistry and people's ability to think for themselves. So
they were giving them lobotomies, basically.
Kind of. Yeah. They were kind of turning them into, like, mindless automatons who are just there to look good, which is pretty much what the point is, so that the government can keep doing everything that they're doing.
Right.
So, of course, when Tally learns all of this, she obviously feels much more like immense guilt with regards to the fact that she's supposed to be there to turn them all in, and she's realizing that everything she's been told her whole life is a lie. And so she does... she is basically about to come clean about this, and I forget what happens with her fucking necklace that it gets activated.
She throws it in the fire.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Because of that, Dr. Cable and the militia essentially are able to descend upon the smoke, because now they've of course located it. And what's happened in the interim as well is that Paris has had a meeting with Dr. Cable, who's asked him about what it was like to see Tally again, and he gives an indication that there's still a little something of himself in there, because he was happy to see her, and he started having, like, emotional reactions to things. And of course she's like, oh, can't have that. Yeah. So she of course offers him the opportunity to become special.
That's right.
Which he does do, which again, like I said, essentially turns you into a super soldier, and I think even more mindless than you were before, because they do a lot more in your head at that point.
Yeah, there's like this like notion I found in this that it was like everything was like a simple mathematical equation. Yeah. Where it was like, if we make you more pretty, then we reduce your brain function.
Yes, it's like the more you can do physically, the less you can do mentally.
Exactly.
Kind of thing.
Like it was like all the things that we give you, we take away from who you are.
So like the core like idea of a lot of this is interesting to explore. I just think that we're past a time period of exploring.
That's what I'm saying. Like where it's too late.
I think
like,
so.
The book was written in 2005. If you had made this movie in 2012, it would have been possible.
10, 12, I would have been like, yeah. Okay.
Like in that cluster of all these movies, we would have been like, yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah. Makes sense, you know, and it would have kind of been part of it, and it would have been part of our like lists, right?
Exactly, yeah.
You know, say Divergent, Hunger Games, Maze Runner, like we would have like
part
had
of our YA dystopian lexicon.
But because it was done so far out of that time period, and like, you know, our social mindset has evolved so much. Yeah. It just doesn't work anymore.
No, not at all. Yeah. So anyway, they show up. David's father is killed, that's sad. And they take all of the Smokies away, obviously back to the city, so they can force them to have the operation. And of course, David's parents are constantly preaching as well that they basically just need a couple more things to develop a cure for this, to reverse the procedure, at least mentally. I don't know if it would reverse it physically or not. Anyway, and that they've basically put together a cure, essentially, which is what they've been working on for like 20 odd years. And what is it? I forget what it is that they need. There's like a couple of specific things that they need for it.
They need something from like Cable's lab or something.
Yeah, that's it, which is why like it's partially why like at least they're able to kind of go back and get that in the city. And of course, you know, David at first is very betrayed because it's technically Tally's fault that this has happened, as it is, because it is.
She did try to tell him.
She did, I know, but it was a little too late type of thing, which again is like a trope that you see a lot in stuff like this. So, but she does obviously apologize, and they do, you know, get together to go into the city to get everyone out. Basically, they're able to, like break, or at least like partially break people out, except that she's like, you know, when she's getting everybody out of the cell, she's like, where's Shay? And they're like, well, they took her first for surgery. That's right. So they go looking for her, and of course they find her in a room, and unfortunately the surgery's already been performed.
I know, it's like pop star idol or something.
Oh my god, like, she looked like she was in a K-pop group.
I know.
It was really bad. And you know, that's it. She's suddenly like, I'm happier now, blah, 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 blah. Like, because they've done everything that they've done to her, of course.
Removed her brain.
Yeah, pretty much. It does feel like a lobotomy. So, and then that's it. Obviously, as they're breaking people out, you know, Cable and the others are going after them. They run out onto the roof, and there's a moment where she's kind of getting through to Paris. But David kind of fucks that up. Not cool, bro, because he is triggered because Paris just killed his dad in front of him, which I do understand. Yeah. But so, you know, when Paris reaches out and he's like touching Tally's hair, and you can tell he's like thinking about things, and he's like, okay, hang on. Yeah. So they get into a physical altercation, and Paris falls over a waterfall, but he's a fucking super soldier, so we know he's not dead.
That's what I said to Dan. I was like, oh no, he's dead. We never saw a body. He's definitely coming back.
Yeah, I'm sure he's in the other books and everything as well. And then so then the whole thing again, because they're able to get all of the aspects that they need for this cure. The whole point is that they're like, okay, well, we'll do it on Shay first, but because Shay's already had the operation and she's like a mindless automaton now, she's like, no, I'm happier this way. I don't want to do it. And the mom keeps reiterating, she's like, okay, but we can't just do this on unwilling people. That's the difference between us and between them. We're not performing these experiments or unwanted experiments on unwilling subjects. We won't do that because that's all they do to people. And so Tally's solution to this fucking martyr that she is just like, okay, she's like, well, do it to me. I'm telling you right now that I'm consenting. I will let them make me pretty, and then I need you to perform the reversal.
See, this just doesn't make sense to me, though, right? And it's because I'm sure Shay would have said the same thing before her surgery.
She would. She was a very willful character.
Right. So it's like, so Tally's saying it now.
I know.
But after her surgery, she's going to be like, no, I don't want to. So then, like, but where does the... Because I've got ethics.
Because of the main character energy, Shereen. Because...
But it's so annoying.
I know. I agree with you. Because, of course, obviously, a rebellion is kind of kicking off at this point, too, which I'm sure is explored, like, in the later stories. Because, like, the Smokies have revealed themselves to people. And a lot of the younger Uglies, especially, are like, oh, okay, you know what? Maybe I want to do something differently, too. This is cool. So they're kind of...
Which also, there was no continuity with this.
None.
I was like, and at no point did they demonstrate that there were some of the younger kids or any of the kids in this school
who don't want to be pretty.
I'm not too into this.
Yeah, I know.
And then all of a sudden, she finds a cluster of them at the end. She's like, hey, guys.
And she's like, hey, let them know about this. And they're all like, okay.
Yeah, she's like, hey, you want to rebel? Like, go rebel. And they're like, yeah, this is what we've been waiting for.
Good idea.
I'm like, where are you? Like,
that I guarantee with those actors, that's a deleted scene from earlier in the movie that we did not see.
Definitely.
We didn't see it. So, of course, she goes and turns herself in and is like, make me pretty. Do it, basically. So then you get the flash forward to her.
Joey King with hair and makeup.
Just her looking, because I've seen her recently, like I think maybe at the premiere of the film, she's got long blonde hair right now. So I'm like, okay, so they took the ugly wig off and put her in full makeup.
Yep.
They just put her in full
golden contacts.
And gave her gold colored contacts or did it in post, whatever. And just that's it. They put her in full glam and good lighting.
That's it.
And she's just like, you know, in her new place or whatever. And obviously, but see, this is what I'm talking about. But you get that little like, oh, I'm the main character, so I'm going to be more willful than other people because her and Paris previously had that scar on their hands from their blood pact years earlier. Right. And she had the surgery done, but she didn't get rid of the scar.
Oh, see, I was watching it on my phone and I couldn't see.
That's like she looks down at her.
She looks at her hand and I'm like, what is that? I'm like squinting. I'm like, is it there?
Yeah, she looks down at her hand and the scar is still there. Right. So, of course, it means that there's still she's still in there somewhere and you can get her back. Right. And then the movie ends, thank fuck. You know what the worst part is about this too?
Oh, there's a worst part?
Well, I mean in the sense that like not that I'd want it anyway because it was so poorly done, but because this was so bad and poorly received, they're never going to make a sequel. So it's not like you're going to clear up any of this.
That's what Dan said. He's like, as if they left it open, as if they're going to make a sequel. He's like, they're never going to make a sequel of this garbage.
Yeah. Why the fuck would they? It must have had like a decent budget because there's quite a bit of CG in it and everything and a lot of like special effects work because they're in a dystopian society. So a lot of it looks very Blade Runner, you know?
They're never ever going to do Blade Runner. That's what it was.
What were you thinking of? What
I don't know.
Like the aesthetic?
Yeah.
It's like shiny Blade Runner though. Blade Runner is
very
like
grungy. Lazy Blade Runner.
It's like Blade Runner meets Fifth Element meets like a couple of other things.
Meets like Percy Jackson.
Yeah, and maybe like I don't know, like Brave New World, like a little bit with like a sheen over it kind of thing, you know.
Anyway, don't watch it.
Oh my goodness gracious. I think this is just not a concept, especially now. This is not a concept that translates well to screen unless you're literally going to cast different actors for the different versions of these people.
That's what I was thinking. Like, after I watched it, I'm like, why would they not just cast different people?
What a good question, Shireen. What an excellent question, Netflix.
Like, if you really want to like demonstrate like the
vast
extreme,
difference,
you
can't find a couple of decent actors who are lookalikes a bit. Come on.
And like, I get it. You're not trying to like offend character one, you know, and say like you're ugly, and then this one's a prettier version. I get it.
But
like,
the entire point of the movie is that they're supposed to be ugly, like, right? So I mean, anyway, it doesn't really make any sense.
Anywho, like, it just shouldn't have been made because there was no way of them doing this that would have made sense.
No, agreed.
Or not offended, like, everyone.
Yeah, that's right. Or not made somebody really mad. So, I would, you know what, I'd be really curious to know what other people would have to say about this movie. I'm sure nothing good, or at least it doesn't feel like that across the board.
Yeah, what about the 15% that liked it?
Yeah, what about some people who actually liked it? I don't know. If you did or if you didn't anyway, you can let us know about that over on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads at FullyBookedCA. And you can also check out our Facebook group, which is at facebook.com/groups/bookWasWayBetter. But until next week, guys, keep on reading.
Thanks, everyone.